Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville. We are gathered here in the South Atrium for the duration, and as I understand it, Madam Clerk, we have no regrets this evening. Councilor, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Madam Clerk, there are none. Would two of you like to move and second resolving into committee of the whole? Councilor Lischina and Councilor O'Meara, all in favor? And we are now in the relaxed rule environment of the Committee of the Whole to consider planning and development matters. The first three items on the agenda are the consent items, the partial assumption of a Dundas 6-line Phase 1 and the deeming bylaw for 328 Gloucester Avenue and the 2012 Halton Region Water and Wastewater Allocation Program. These are minor items that are considered to be of no controversy whatsoever. I'm going to take a motion from Councillor Hutchins to adopt them. In Committee of the Whole, we don't have a second. Councillor Adams, do you want to separate one? Yes. Would you like a microphone?
Once.
Try yours.
Well, now it's working.
Oh, wait. Look, it works, but the light doesn't go on. Okay. I just had a very quick question about item number 3, so if I can separate that, that'd be helpful.
Would you ask your question?
I would ask my question. The question is, when the delegated authority is used to provide consent on a transfer of allocation, can council be made aware of it, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, most certainly we'll send a notice, an email out to you to let you know when those requests have come in and our response back.
I assume that it wouldn't be used very often. As far as I'm aware, it's a irregularly used thing.
It's very few times has it been used.
Thank you.
May I put the vote? All those in favor? Opposed, if any, the consent items are adopted. We now come to our public hearing item, and this is the statutory public meeting and recommendation report for the draft plan of condominium for Madam Holdings, which is Mattamy Development Company at 1388 Dundas Street West. We have a presentation from our senior planner, Mr. Robert Thun, and I'll ask for public comment or delegations after the presentation and council's questions. Mr. Thun, we're all ears.
Thank you, Mayor Burton and members of council. The site before us tonight has been the subject of a number of development applications in the past, considerable public consultation, and staff review. And as of August of last year, there is a lapsed approval for the draft plan of vacant land condominium. Okay. The proposal reflects a request for the reapproval of the 16-lot detached dwelling development. If you go by the site, you'll notice that there are 4 model homes as originally envisioned by the original approval that have been constructed. So tonight the application is for a draft plan of vacant land condominium. Also, council may remember back in June 11th of this year, approval was granted for a town-initiated zoning bylaw amendment for this site. Tonight's report can be found on page 29 of tonight's agenda. For a little bit of background, the location, the subject lands are 1.22 hectares in size. They are bound by Dundas Street, Proudfoot Trail, Scotch Pine Drive, and a tributary of the 16 Mile Creek, which is to the north part of this slide, the upper part of this slide right there. Adjacent to the site is as follows. To the north, so north of Dundas Street, are vacant developable lands that are part of the North Oakville East and West Secondary Plan. There is also a radio tower just to the east of this site at the corner of Dundas Street West and 4th Line. To the east is the tributary of the 16 Mile Creek and a townhouse development just on the north side of the Glenarr Gate Trail and Natural Heritage System. To the south, you have 2-story detached residential dwellings. And to the west, as you can see from the air photo here, is Proudfoot Trail and 4-story stacked townhouse complex. From a livable Oakville plan and an existing zoning perspective, the site is designated medium density residential with a site-specific exception. and also low density residential. As you can see from the slide here, there is a differentiation between the medium and the low. Each of the designations does permit the proposed detached dwelling development. The overall density for the project is 16 units per site hectare. So basically the development site is 1 hectare in size, 16 hectares for the development. The existing zoning has a holding provision H21 with a parent zoning of RL6 and a special provision 317. That is what council approved in June of this past year. From the draft plan of vacant land condominium perspective, this proposal, or the slide before you, shows the ultimate development. It consists of 16 lots for detached dwellings, as previously mentioned. Lots 1 to 10 are used for model homes in the interim to showcase homes for Mattamy north of Dundas Street. Lots 1 to 4, as I already mentioned, do contain model homes. These model homes are dry. They are not connected up to services, so they cannot be habitable. Ultimate access will be from Scotch Pine, as you can see from the slide itself, in this location right here. In the interim, the Proudfoot and Dundas Street access points will remain until the sales center ceases to operate. Block 17 will be a common element condominium road. So that is the common element that everybody from the 16 units will have to be part of. Blocks 18, 19, and 20, so 18 will be the extension of the trail system, 19 is the buffer area, and 20 is a small buffer area along Proudfoot. Those will be conveyed to the town upon registration. And similarly, block 21, which is a small section along Dundas Street for road widening, will be conveyed to the region of Halton. Phasing of the development based on lots 1 to 4, 5 to 10, and 11 to 16 are outlined within my staff report. In preparing for the presentation tonight, a comment was received by staff with regards to noise. This slide highlights where the noise barriers are required. As you'll see from the slide, noise barriers are required on lots 1 to 4, where the existing model homes are. Lot 10 along the trail system, and also 11 to 16. These will be either a combination of berm and or walls, and they address noise created through Dundas Street or Proudfoot Trail. Condition 43 within the conditions of approval, the responsibility of those noise barriers will be the condominium at the end of the day. They will be constructed by Mattamy, but be the responsibility for future maintenance, ownership through the condominium corporation, and clauses will be associated with the condominium declaration. This approach has been reviewed with regional staff, and they are agreeable to this approach. Since the writing of the report, there have been 2 submissions. One was dated September 6th, and the other one was received today. The first submission, September 6th, raised 3 points. With regards to traffic and roads, so those are 2 points, a transportation study was submitted with the supporting documentation for the application. It was reviewed by internal transportation staff. No concerns were raised with regards to transportation or roads. With regards to the green space that was cited in the September 6th submission, this site is being developed in accordance with the Livable Oakville plan, so the medium density and the low density designations. For council's information, there are 2 parkettes and a community park within walking distance of this site. The one is on Proudfoot Trail, the other one is on Dashwood, and the community park is on Pine Glen. The second submission received today raised 4 points. With regards to the first 2 points of that September 10th submission, a comment was raised with regards to the word vacant and what's to be constructed. Both of those are discussed on page 2 and 3 within the staff report. It's a vacant land condominium. It is a process. It's not reflective of the land itself, but it is an application process. With regards to point 3, it is Mattamy's intention to build an additional model homes on lots 5 to 10 within the next year, with ultimate construction not occurring until the sales office ceases. This could be several years away. A further comment was raised, Your Worship, with regards to compensation plans when construction occurs. There are no plans for this. Okay, noise, dust, construction, timing of construction, operation, they're all regulated by the town's various bylaws. So Mayor Burton and members of council, staff have reviewed the application. We consider the proposal to be consistent with the 2014 PPS, conforms to applicable provincial plans, the region's official plan, the Livable Oakville plan, reflects suitable intensification for the underutilized lands, utilizes existing infrastructure, services, water, sanitary, storm, and aids in achieving the minimum intensification targets that are established through the Livable Oakville plan. So in conclusion, Your Worship, staff put forth a recommendation as you see before you on page 29. Conditions of draft approval can be found in Appendix A of the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thun. Councillor Elger?
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Mr. Thun, this was previously approved back in 2012 after meetings with the people that lived in that area. And I believe their concern was that there was going to be no cut-through or an entrance from Dundas, right? That's what their biggest concern was?
That is correct.
So now it's laid out so there is no additional cut-through entrances going onto Dundas or onto Proudfoot?
That is correct, Your Worship.
Okay. The one other concern I have is that people buying those places, to make them aware that in fact there are radio towers. Now they're not right tight to this development application, but would you be okay if we put in one condition, an additional condition regarding the existence of the radio towers to the north around 4th Line?
I have no problem with an additional clause.
Okay, I thank you for that. And the only other thing I guess is the road going in now is shifted, what, 1.5 meters?
Yes, from the previous approval, the road did shift 1.5 meters just along the throat where it connects to Scotch Pine. The remaining road is exactly in the same location.
I thank you for that. So here if there's any delegations. If not, I'm prepared to move this with one amendment to it.
Thank you, Councillor Elger. Are there any other members of council having questions? Are there members of the public with information for council? Councillor Elger, you're moving the staff recommendation plus an additional condition to be included with the conditions of draft approval as follows: that the owner include the condominium agreement, the condominium declaration, and all purchase with the condominium agreement, the condominium declaration, and all purchase and sale agreements the following warning clause. Quote, purchasers are advised that radio towers exist to the north of the site at the intersection of Dundas Street West and 4th Line. Is that your motion?
That's the addition. Yes, thank you.
Discussion? May I put the vote? All in favor? And that is adopted. Thank you, everybody. That brings us to number 5, which is a public meeting and recommendation report for the temporary use zoning bylaw 2331 9th Line. Councillor Knoll.
Your Worship, I apologize. I did not declare a pecuniary interest earlier. A conflict of interest. I don't have a pecuniary interest, but because I am in a competitive business with this applicant, I'm not going to participate in the vote or participate in the discussion.
Well, thank you for the declaration. You can just push back. Council, the remainder of us will be treated now to a presentation from Kate Coburn. And I don't know, are congratulations in order as well?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This evening, I have an application for a zoning bylaw amendment. This report can be found on page 71 of your agendas tonight. The purpose of the report is to provide a full staff review of the application and recommendations this evening for the proposed amendment. And staff note that we are recommending approval of this application. The property is located at 2331 9th Line and is known as the 5 Drive-In. The application and the proposed amendment would be to temporarily rezone the lands to permit the storage of motor vehicles for a period of 3 years. The drive-in operates seasonally and therefore has opportunities to accommodate additional uses on the property. The proposed parking of storage of motor vehicles would be occurring in the off-season and the shoulder season of the drive-in use. The majority of the property that is currently occupied by motor vehicles during the drive-in times are highlighted here, and these are the 4 locations in which the storage of vehicles would occur in the off-season, mainly in the winter months. These areas would be reduced in the shoulder season, which is in the fall time right now, and during the spring season when 1 or 2 of the theater screens are available for public use. And then during the main season, the entire facility would be continued to use as a drive-in. If approved, the bylaw would expire in 3 years from the date of passing, and the applicant can request an extension of the temporary use bylaw before the bylaw does expire. Staff received no public comments on the proposal. There are no objections from circulated agencies and departments, and no issues were raised during the review of the application. Of note, the lands are designated business employment in the Livable Oakville official plan, and the existing drive-in use and motor vehicle storage use are both permitted uses within the official plan, and therefore conforms to the official plan. The lands are zoned E2, which is the business employment zone, including Special Provision 68, which permits the drive-in theater in addition to the range of uses permitted in the E2 zone. The E2 zone also permits the parking of heavy vehicles, such as trucks or commercial vehicles exceeding 4,500 kilograms. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment is required to permit the storage of motor vehicles, such as cars or motorcycles. Staff are of the opinion that the proposed zoning amendment is appropriate as it permits the additional use on the property in the off and shoulder seasons, and it is a more sensitive land use than the heavy truck parking that is permitted as of right, and is similar to the existing drive-in theater use. On that basis, the following recommendation is provided for you this evening: that the comments from the public with respect to the temporary use application be received, that the temporary zoning bylaw amendment application submitted is consistent with the provincial policy statement and does conform or does not conflict with the applicable provincial plans, the Region of Halton official plan, the Livable Oakville, and has regard for matters of provincial interest. It is recommended that bylaw 2018-119 be passed, and that council's decision is reflective of the matters fully considered. That is my presentation. If I will take any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there members of the public with information for council on this matter? Okay. Councillor Chisholm, you have a question?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, just a few quick questions. With respect to the vehicles, are these new vehicles going in here, or are these damaged vehicles from accidents, or what is the quality of the vehicles going in there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, it is our understanding that these vehicles are new vehicles that are being stored off-site from the dealerships that they are being created for as an interim storage solution.
And that's good to know, because my concern is that if we have damaged vehicles, we have a discharge of fluids and gas and oil, and environmentally, we might have a challenge there. So as long as that's in check, I have no problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Would one of the members of Ward 6 like to move this boost for a local business? Councillor Adams?
I'd be glad to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor. May I put the vote? All in favor? And that carries, everyone. We move now to item number 6, a discussion item. This is the recommendation report and zoning bylaw amendment and plan of subdivision for Infrastructure Ontario. And we have a presentation, if you require it, from Mr. Barrett. And I say if you require it because I believe you all are very familiar with this. Mr. Barrett, let me first check with council. Councillor Elgar.
Mayor Burton, I don't think I need a presentation unless there's people in the audience that are here to speak to this item. And if not, I think be prepared to move this. It's a good news story.
Thank you. Are there members of the public with information for council on this matter? So, I'm going to make a big stab at this. Is Mr. Salas-Leja here? Were you here to answer questions in case there were any?
In case there are any. I wasn't going to make a formal presentation. It was just to respond to any questions that council may have.
Thank you very much. Mr. Barrett, thank you. Councillor Elgar?
Yes, I'd be pleased to move the staff recommendation. This is a good news story for everyone, not only in Oakville, but all of Halton region, actually. This is needed.
This is, in case there's still a mystery, this is the courthouse, which is a big catch for our town. And Councillor Elgar has moved it. May I put the vote? All in favor? Opposed, if any? And that does carry as well. That brings us to item number 7. And number 7 is the downtown mitigation strategy. We have a presentation from Dorothy St. George, our Director of Economic Development, and we have registered delegations from at least 3 folks in the downtown BIA village area. So let's give our attention to Ms. St. George to kick this off.
Good evening, Mayor Burton, members of council. The report before you is the mitigation strategy for the Lakeshore Road reconstruction and streetscape project. And this follows the report from April of this year, in which we outlined a framework for this strategy. Since that time, a staff team with representation from various departments, as well as the executive director of the BIA, have been fleshing out the strategy, estimating costs, and undertaking best practice research. The report this evening provides the completed strategy, including recommendations for mitigation and associated costs. And I think there's recognition through this strategy that this is the impact of the construction will be tough for businesses. The strategy addresses the feedback that we received from stakeholders regarding mitigation. But it also recognizes that there's not unlimited funds to provide mitigation initiatives. We also recognize that the plan needs to be flexible and responsive. Tweaking as evidence indicates that things are going well or not going well, we'll adjust the strategy. Best practices were gleaned from various communities with similar projects, including Kingston, Waterloo, Cambridge, London, Brampton, Guelph, and Markham. These communities had elements of mitigation, but none of them had a formal mitigation strategy. So they're all quite interested in learning what Oakville approves. Through consultation, we learned that no community offered financial compensation to businesses. However, communities implemented various kinds of mitigation. Most important was communication. They noted that a liaison person was very important to maintain a timely flow of information and to respond to issues quickly. One community learned that lesson the hard way and only introduced a liaison person partway through the project when issues arose. Some communities allocated funds for marketing, and others had phasing premiums to complete work in defined periods. Communities noted the need to be flexible and responsive, especially to the unexpected. And we all know there'll be unexpected things that arise through this process. Most of the communities contacted had some type of construction and communication mitigation. And while some provided subsidized parking, others did not. None of the communities provided the types of economic mitigation that are proposed in this report. The 4 key areas for mitigation include construction, marketing and communications, economic, and events. The first area for the strategy is construction mitigation. And these 3 comments are really what we heard throughout the consultation process. Get it done as fast as you can, minimize disruption, and address issues quickly. So in order to do the project quickly, there will be a pre-qualification of contractors. That process is underway. There'll be extended hours of operation for the construction and an early completion bonus built into the tender. In order to minimize disruption, there's construction phasing. So it's been identified that this project will take place from April of 2019 through mid-November, leaving the Christmas period open, one of the biggest, busiest retail periods for the downtown. It will then recommence in April of the following year and be completed by mid-November. Also, to minimize disruption, there'll be signage and wayfinding, maintenance of a clean work site, coordinated pedestrian and vehicle access for customers, employees, and deliveries. The town square rehabilitation will be undertaken in phase 1 of this project as well. To address issues quickly, there will be key points of contact through the construction contractor, engineering, and liaison staff. And another feature of the construction is the inclusion of smart city technologies, which will bring long-term benefits to the district. And the smart city costs are not part of the mitigation costs that you see in this report, but would be part of that construction tender. The second area for the strategy is marketing and communications, and that strategy is very simple. Keep everyone informed. Businesses, residents, visitors, council. For marketing and communications, the importance of the liaison role was stressed by local stakeholders as well as the communities consulted in our best practice research. You've met Mary Valley. She's here this evening. She was brought on a full-time contract in this role in January of this year, and she has spent considerable time with businesses, resident associations, and other stakeholders. A project office has been established at the former post office on Church Street, and Ms. Valley will be located there with a part-time assistant. Together, they will implement the marketing and communications plan that was completed this year. Ms. Valley is already out with communication, as you see on this slide, providing information about what to expect with the first phase of construction. And there will be ongoing communication with stakeholders and the BIA in order to keep people informed. The third pillar for the strategy is economic mitigation. And that is to provide direct assistance to the businesses that will be impacted by construction. We haven't seen this in other communities that we consulted. And these are programs to bolster the operations of retailers and restaurants, and these will provide, or may provide, long-term benefits that go well beyond the construction period. So not included in economic mitigation is financial compensation to businesses. And as outlined in the report to Council in April of this year, that is prohibited under the Municipal Act and considered bonusing. There are, however, a number of economic mitigation initiatives that are being recommended, and these do provide direct benefits to businesses. Wow, the big elephant in the room has been parking in all of our discussions, and businesses have asked for free parking throughout the construction period. So we looked at the costs of doing so. And to provide free parking for the whole period of construction would be approximately $3 million. And that reflects the estimated 20% reduction in the parking revenue that we will achieve just due to the construction period. The cost of providing free parking on Saturday is $315,000. And the cost for first hour free parking using the honk app is approximately $272,000 or $136,000 in each year. The free parking with the first hour free parking with the honk app is what we're recommending in this report. It provides a discount to everybody every time they come downtown. That first hour is free. It encourages the use of an app where Town Council has invested money already, and it's a solution that is more affordable than providing a $3 million hit to the town for free parking through the whole period. The next item was an expression from the consultation period about the number of parking spots that would be impacted throughout construction. And we know that that number is 75 in each phase of construction. However, 30 new parking spots were created this year on Water and Navy Streets, and another 66 new parking spots are being explored. And in addition, there are 50 temporary spots that will be created at the former fire hall site, and therefore there will be no loss of parking during construction. So there are existing permit holders in some of the spots closer to the core, and as with the creation of these new spots, some of these permit holders will be moved out to provide more transient parking in the core. Digital Main Street is a program that's offered in Toronto, and it's now being extended into the GTA. We are able to leverage 3 times the amount of money that the town puts in through provincial funding of this program. It provides individualized assessment and assistance to businesses free of charge. This could be website development, analytics, helping them get new revenue streams by figuring out how they can do online shopping, or how their customers can do online shopping from their stores. We're also proposing a restaurant program, and we're getting a proposal this week from Skip the Dishes to implement that program with its training and startup costs downtown in order to generate new revenue for the restaurants. The patio and outdoor display fee waivers have been continued and already approved by council. And the last pillar of this strategy is, with regard to events, is to attract people downtown during construction by animating the street and to deliver value-added events that increase sales to businesses. The BIA indicated that they want to maintain as many events as possible to attract people to the downtown core, and staff are working on a revised events plan based on the construction timeline, and that will help them facilitate as many events as possible. Liaison staff will also plan milestone events that will not only animate the street, but help drive sales from business owners. An example is Le Dîner en Blanc, involving restaurants as the feature of the community event. And lastly, technology events at the former post office have been incorporated into the plan for the proposed innovation hub at that location. This is another component of the strategy to attract people to the downtown during the construction period. And my last slide is a summary of the mitigation costs for the initiatives that are outlined in the report. There is more detail in the appendix to the report before you, but just in summary, if you look at the second column, it's the 2018 actual dollars, and this is money spent to bring liaison staff on board this year and to complete the marketing communications plan. The third and fourth columns relate to the budget requests in 2019 and 2020. So if you look at the items under those columns, for construction, that includes of $75,000 and $60,000 in 2020. That includes an early completion bonus and some of the costs for the temporary setup of parking, the temporary parking spots. Under the economic category, this includes the first hour free parking with honk of $136,000 per year, plus $25,000 for the digital Main Street and restaurant programs that I've outlined. Again, those programs will outline 3 times the funding with provincial dollars. Under marketing and communications, this figure of $190,000 includes staff, administrative costs for the post office, plus $30,000 per year for implementation of the marketing and communications plan. Events is self-explanatory. So if you look at the final column, the total mitigation cost as proposed in this report is approximately $1 million. Subtracting the pre-committed costs leaves a balance of approximately $600,000 over the 2-year period. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Duddick.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation and the various components that you were looking at in trying to mitigate the situation. I understand under your 3.7 property taxes and levies, and I realize with the provincial legislation and that our hands are pretty well tied. But given the fact that the BIAs currently have an arrangement with the town for, say, streetscaping, or for, pardon me, beautification, like pots and things of that nature. And it's a percentage that the town puts in, and it's a percentage that the BIA puts in. Do we look at anything in terms of increasing the amount of money that the town would put towards that versus something that would maybe have our hands restricted through the legislation? I'm just trying to be a little bit more creative in terms of something we could do.
Through you, Mayor Burton, we haven't included any kinds of increases to funding for the BIA itself. Some municipalities that we consulted provided some marketing dollars to the BIA rather than undertaking any marketing initiatives themselves.
So is that something we're still exploring at this point with them, or? Because I'm just thinking the fact that if we're looking at various components and we're saying we can't do this, you can't get money back, we can't compensate you basically for loss of business and that. I'm concerned about the fact that maybe being a little bit more creative in things that the town already, whether through special events, forgiving fees, things that we've done in terms of, the parking that we've compensated as well.
Again, through you, Mayor Burton, rather than providing dollars to the BIA, what we've done here is identify a certain marketing communications budget, recognizing that the BIA has a fairly healthy marketing budget itself. So while they're marketing to attract a lot of people downtown, the role here with the liaison staff is to be using dollars for communication, so informing people about the construction project. And then the event side speaks to attracting more people downtown as well.
But then the events you had indicated, you're trying to time them around the shopping calendar or the major times. With construction, sometimes we don't have that luxury. So I'm kind of concerned the fact that some of the things that you're speaking to for the actual business owner really is not going to amount to too much for them in the big scheme of things. And I can appreciate you've explored everything, but I'm also very, very concerned about the ones who are staying the course, so to speak, throughout this process and are taking the loss of revenue and all the other things associated with it. So,
through you, Mayor Burton, I think that the elements of the mitigation strategy do address the concerns that were raised by businesses and by the BIA. And I think, if anything, it's really the dollar amount that's been attached to each of those items.
All righty, Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just want to clarify two things. So when you say that there will be no loss of parking, my math actually says that we're going to be increasing by about 70 spots. Is that correct?
Well, we have not, through Mayor Burton, we have not yet, we don't know whether or not those 66 new parking spots will be found. They're exploring it.
Okay.
So the parking spots that have been created are the ones from this year, 30 this year.
Okay.
As well as the 50 temporary spots. So you've got 80 spots versus the 75 that'll be lost.
So I would say maybe worst case scenario, we will be flush, but we're trying to actually increase the capacity then. Is that accurate?
That's right. So right now we're flush and with hopefully increasing more permanent spots.
And could you maybe just go into a little bit more detail about what exactly it is we're trying to do with Skip the Dish? I'm not really clear, other than say, hey, have you heard of this app and here's a restaurant. What's our involvement in that?
So that would be working with, the Skip the Dishes has a program. We are waiting for the proposal to come in this week. And that's to work with the restaurants to identify a new revenue stream for them. I think only 10% of the businesses or the restaurants downtown are using that app right now.
I'm just wondering what either they know it's there or they don't, so we're just telling them that it's there, or are we going to pay into an admin cost to help offset that for restaurants, or what? I mean, what is our role other than letting people who may not know about it know that it's there, or are we going deeper with this company in restaurants?
Through you, Mayor Burton, the costs for it, which we've identified in the report are about $5,000 per year, are really for the setup and training that would be associated with getting people on board.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Knoll?
Thank you, Worship. Councillor Dudek talked about the BIA. Thank you for raising those issues. I was going to ask a similar question. With respect to following up on Councillor O'Meara's comments about skip the dishes, did we look at competitive bids in that area? Because there are other competitors to skip the dishes. There's Uber Eats and what's the other one? Just Eat and Grubhub. Yeah, I'm not sure Grubhub's in Oakville, but did we look at those ones as well as to see if there was a way to potentially leverage?
And I understand from Marion, I'm going to look for her for confirmation that she did speak with a number of different competitors, and it was the skip the dishes that seemed to be the one that made the most sense.
Okay, but so there was no request for proposals in that regard?
No, there were not.
Okay, and the cost, I'm a little surprised at the cost. I mean, full disclosure, my business used to skip the dishes. There was no upfront cost. They trained us, provided us with everything for free, so I don't know why they would be charging, but anyway, that's just something to keep in the back of your mind as you're discussing it with them. The issue of the parking, so you mentioned the potential parking available at the fire station. Is there any capital improvements required to achieve those parking spaces?
We've included, if you look at the construction costs, there's $15,000 included there, and that's to get some of the temporary parking spots. So they need to put in lines to delineate the parking spots, as well as parking meters.
Okay, so it's strictly then just setup costs. There's no actual construction costs required to, because it says temporary parking setup and signage. So I was curious whether there was any capital works that have to be done in addition to simple setup.
No, there would not be.
Okay. My third question is, let me just get back to the chart here. So patio and outdoor displays, fee waiver, it says NA for cost. What would our revenue be from that normally?
I don't have that information with me right now, but I can certainly provide it to you.
But it wouldn't be substantial, would it? We're not talking about parking size revenue?
No, it would not. It's the fee that would be charged for the parking spots that are utilized for the patios. And I think is it $20 per day per stall, I think is the amount, and I'm seeing confirmation from Ms. Closey.
If we could get a memo afterwards just outlining that, just because obviously it's not in the report, I'd like to know what that is. That's all I have, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chisholm?
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to go back to the property taxes and levies, and I understand under the Municipal Act, assessments and so forth, we can't reduce. Is there any creative solution or opportunities from our tax department or finance department to look at when some of these businesses are getting strained financially? There could be buying some time without being charged an interest to pay back if they're having a rough year. And they can't pay their taxes. Is there something that we can pull a little further out for them for repayment, so we don't put the pressure on them?
Through you, Mayor Burton, we haven't explored that option. It's something we can look into.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. Councillor Giddings?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There were a couple of items that have been raised already. Further to Councillor Dudek's comment, the final design stage is yet to come later this year. And part of that will have the smart city technologies that we aren't sure in terms of the total cost as yet. The marketing and communications, you mentioned that there were 2 cities that did offer some of that. Are these items that could come back as we get further details that we could bring to the Budget Committee in December?
Through you, Mayor Burton, certainly, and I can provide some information this evening. Of the communities consulted, the 2 that were identified as providing marketing dollars were the City of London. They had a 2-year project for their downtown reconstruction, and they established a $200,000 marketing and communications budget. The other community that we consulted with a marketing budget was the region of Waterloo, partnered with the City of Kitchener, and provided a total of $40,000 marketing dollars over a 2-year period for a similar project.
And the other 6 communities didn't offer any assistance?
No, they did not.
All right. You talk about the early completion bonus. That's similar to what we offered the contractor when the Lakeshore Bridge.
Through Mayor Burton, yes, the costs that were identified here, $60,000, that was derived from the cost per day that was delivered through the Lakeshore Bridge construction project. It's approximately $4,000 a day. So $60,000 would work out to about a 15-day early completion.
Is that capped at $60,000, or what if they come in at 23 days early?
Well, we haven't, the tender has not yet been issued, but that's the estimate that we've put in here for this budget.
So could that be open-ended? I'd hate them to slow down so they don't complete the work earlier than 15 days.
I look to engineering for how they're going to word that in the tender.
So as Ms. Dorothy had said, we haven't yet got that tender out, but it would be structured very similar to the bridge works that was done, and I believe in that case there was a set amount because we had a budget amount we had to stay within in terms of their early completion of the project. So it would be structured very similar to the bridge project.
So the assumption is that the timelines pending the detailed designs, about 2 weeks is the best that could be hoped for through construction, if it were to be done early?
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, if I understand the pieces in here, there is an early completion for each year of the project. So that means over those 2-year timeframes, so that they're completed in time to meet the Santa Claus Parade components and
Right.
things that are happening downtown. So those elements would be built into the tendering process.
All right, thank you. I appreciate the fact there's no loss of parking and the additional spots at the fire hall. We had talked at one point about making use of the garage at the hospital, former hospital site. Is that still something that we could look at?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we did explore that, and due to the construction timelines for that site is not a feasible option for parking related to this project.
All right, and any feedback from the other municipalities regarding parking enforcement during the construction season?
Through you, Mayor Burton, there were no comments about parking enforcement. We do know that some communities provided some subsidized parking, others provided none at all. But with respect to enforcement during this project, we recognize that, there are certain, for safety reasons, we need to continue to have enforcement. There are no stopping signs, some no parking areas, and with a restricted area, it makes even more a more prudent decision to have that enforcement in place. And then the other factor to consider is we want to encourage turnover. We don't want to have employees parking in key spots all day, so you want to make sure that that enforcement is there to ensure that turnover downtown.
All right, I see Ms. Pluman here. Maybe she'll be able to comment on that. I assume that she'll be up speaking. That's all I have for now, Mr. Mayor. I'd be happy to make a motion at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Your Worship. Dorothy, just a quick question, and Councillor Giddings alluded to it. Can you give a bit of a preview on the smart city technology and who's bearing the cost of that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's actually a workshop with WSP tomorrow and staff members to identify both the items, the smart city technologies that would be included in the project, as well as the procurement process. These would be costs that would be borne by the town.
Okay. And then my second question is, if you're going to be offering a bonus for early completion, will you have a penalty in the event of late delivery?
I'm going to look look to Jane as well.
Actually, Ms. Stevens can provide that. I believe there is, but Ms. Stevens is here.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is an option that we can include in our contracts to have a late completion penalty, and that would be similar to what we did with the Lakeshore Bridge.
Okay. Definitely. Thank you.
Councillor Hutchins.
Thank you. Sorry, Jill, if you could clarify that. It was a bit garbled. Is there a penalty if they are late, the builders and the constructors?
Sorry, my apologies. Through you, Mayor Burton. With the Lakeshore Bridge, we did have both a clause in there for early completion and a penalty for if the contractor was late. And we are envisioning doing the same thing with the tender for this project. So a bonus if you finish on each phase on time, a penalty if they're not done in time in the timelines that we've set.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I had a couple of questions, really curiosity. And was the zoning on the site, is it temporary or permanent for the post office? What zoning was put on that site? I'm not familiar with it.
There hasn't been a change in zoning for the post office.
So it's able to be anything. I mean, innovative hub. It could be manufacturing. Could be electronics. Could be all sorts of things.
Through you, Mayor Burton, the proposal that was put forward for the Innovation Hub in an application to FedDev was to use the site for collaborative technology projects. It's really as an office space. So those are for people to come together working on collaborative technology-related projects as well as events. There would not be any manufacturing on the site.
Okay, thank you. I understand that the Honk app, I mean, lots of people use it, but there's a lot of elderly people that don't and find it very difficult. Are we doing anything about that? I mean, if you had Saturday free parking, for instance, that's a simple thing. Everybody understands. They don't have to do anything. They just do it. Whilst with the Honk app, it's something that you've got to get technical. And as you know, Ward 3 and Ward 2 have some of the highest rates of seniors anywhere in Ontario and Canada, never mind Ontario.
Through you, Mayor Burton, we understand from parking staff that there's a steady increase in the usage of the Honk app, so that's a good thing. And we felt that providing it encourages more use. Ms. Valley and I were speaking today about if we're providing that free hour of parking, making sure that we've got people out telling them about it and encouraging them, helping them understand how to use it. We recognize that there are some people that won't use it. I do know that from the delegations they're proposing that there be both first hour free honk and Saturday free parking. It comes down to it's a matter of cost.
Well, will the town be perhaps putting something together to perhaps send out so that people can send it out on their email lists or wherever to try and get the information out to people about it, how to do it, that sort of thing?
Yes, through you, Mayor Burton, certainly. We will be promoting both the discount and the usage of it. The other thing that's available for people who don't have those apps are the tokens for downtown. And those are available through the BIA at a discounted rate. The town provides it to the BIA discounted. So those are certainly tokens that people can use for parking as an alternative to the app.
Okay, well, perhaps when Mrs. Pluman comes and does her presentation, that's a question I might put to her about helping with the Honk app as well as the tokens. Thank you.
Councillor Dudek again.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. You had commented at one point about the BIA, possibly the month of December being a concern for them being a prime time. Do we look at offering free parking for that month per se? I'm just thinking if there's a month that, rather than going for the whole duration of the project, if there's a month that is very good for them and they have a good month, that might assist them in the overlong haul, so to speak. Do we look at any kind of options for a month, for 1 month per se?
Through you, Mayor Burton, we did have that discussion amongst the staff team, and it was felt that bringing it in for 1 month and then taking it away through the construction period might be more damaging than not having it at all through that month. We can certainly cost it out and have it, promote it as something that's available. Again, it gets down to an additional cost for that month.
Council, thank you for your questions. Madam Clerk, I think it's time to call the delegations. Would you please call the delegations?
First delegation is Charlene Pluman, Executive Director of the Downtown BIA.
Ms. Pluman, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you for having me. Shall I begin or shall I allow that to be distributed? Thank you. So, Your Worship, Mayor Burton and Council, thank you for having me here this evening. I would first like to thank that the town has thought about mitigation strategies for this project. It is going to be challenging, so we do applaud the town and the staff for putting the time to think about how can we mitigate this and how can we see the businesses through the challenges, because we do need that to happen. We need to come out of this with businesses still in business. Otherwise, we don't have a downtown and we're in a lot worse shape than we are now. We do feel there's some good plans here, but we do think a lot of them are not robust enough and need to be addressed in a little bit more detail. And I appreciate that a lot of the comments that have come up already are going to mimic some of the thoughts that we had as well. We do request for parking, that free parking be considered throughout the duration of the project. And as Councillor Dudek pointed out, let's keep it in December as well. So don't put it in and take it away. Let's have it in, have it also free in December so that we can say, this phase is done, come celebrate, come when it's busy, and have it free, put it back free for the next phase and keep it free for December again to welcome people when the project is done. We recognize this is a large ask. It's $3 million, as has been stated. But having a downtown that has 0 businesses or even only 50% businesses would be such a detriment for the long term that I think we're being short-sighted to get caught up in $3 million. We have over $350 million in assessed value in the downtown core, which will drastically drop if it's vacant at the end of this project. So I really think we need to look long-term and say, if we're looking at the health of downtown in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, what is $3 million out of a parking reserve where it exists? I understand we need it to fix parking, fix parking and fix the parking lots, and I get why the reserve is there. But I still think we need to be proactive and making sure that people can come down. I understand we have to look at how to stop businesses from abusing it. That is certainly a factor. I think we can look to the BIA and the businesses to work on this together to say, how do we make sure businesses don't abuse this so that the free parking is there for our customers? I think there's solutions. There's places that have done it successfully, and I really think we need to take a look at that. There are some other confirmations that we'd like about the proposal that I don't want to burden people too much with, but basically, where are these permit parking? We agree. Let's get the permit parkers slightly outside of the core. Let's open up these spaces in the, in the parking lots for our customers. All great, but where are they going exactly, and how much spaces are we moving, especially when we're looking at 2020? Are we expecting people who right now park at Allen and Lakeshore to park at the fire hall site and walk that distance? So we want just some clarification on where the permit parkers are being moved to. We do agree, let's let them walk a few blocks and free that up for the customers, so we like that, but just clarification on that point. We'd also like some clarification on where the construction workers themselves are parking. Every time we have construction downtown, the workers arrive at 7 in the morning and take up all of the spaces and are parking, right in front of the businesses the whole time. Where are they going to go? Can we write it into the plan that there must be off-site parking for these people that are then shuttled in at the expense of the firm doing the work? Let's make them proactive and put their vehicles somewhere other than in our downtown core in these parking spaces that we've just spent so much time and effort freeing up for those customers. In particular, also, we've heard recently that all of the 3 blocks that are under construction are going to be closed at the same time. It would be really disappointing to see that a block or a half is closed and is just housing personal workers' vehicles for construction. I get staging for big equipment, I get all that. But if it simply held everybody's pickup trucks, that I think would be an issue. So we'd just like clarification on what are the plans to address that. But that's a more minor than looking at better support for that free parking initiative. In terms of financial mitigation, I'd be remiss to not say we're extremely disappointed to hear that there isn't going to be any. While I recognize that the Municipalities Act may say tax bonusing is not provided, let's think out of the box and think of other ways. Some of them have presented today about how else we could do it. Could there be better offsets for what we're paying for flowers? Could there be other ways that, there's burden lifted off the BAA so we can funnel even more to marketing that we're planning on doing? Let's get creative. A business came to me today to say, hey, I've been through this, and we were able to do a better job of providing people to come back, an incentive to come back, by providing what they called, it was their business dollars, but in this case, downtown dollars. Come and have a meal at restaurant A, 10% of that you get back as downtown dollars to go spend at restaurant B, or maybe back at restaurant A. That could be subsidized as a way to mitigate and get people back in shops and back in restaurants, because it wouldn't just be restaurants, it could be anywhere. That would be aside from bonusing, that we could provide some really creative ways to say, let's get the dollars back in these stores during this time frame and keep them in business. So we're just upset that there wasn't perhaps more thought put into how to get creative in this rather than just saying we can't give you a tax break. For marketing, we appreciate that $30,000 was put forward, but we know we do marketing as well. I think that VIA is a marketing firm, so we know well that $30,000 sometimes can go really, really quickly. If we're looking at informing the entire community, $30,000 isn't going to do it for us. I know this because we would love the entire community to come to Songs of Summer, let's say. We have great numbers, but we do not have 180,000, the whole population of Oakville there. We need more money than that to get them there, so I know how much money we're going to need to put towards this. So we'd like to see upwards of $300,000 put towards this. Let's keep people going. Again, in the long term, $300,000 a year is not all that long to keep these businesses going in a thriving downtown. Further, we request that there be budget allocated for 2021 when the project is done. People who have been weary of coming downtown the entire time need to be wooed back in. We can't just drop off because the ribbons are cut. We need to invite them back in. We are dedicating about $260,000 a year of BIA money, and I say this approximately because the 2019-2020 budget has not been confirmed with the members, but that's our anticipated spend. So we're putting skin in this game as well. That doesn't count the money we're putting into events and beautification, which are also marketing tools to bring people down. Digital Main Street, we think it's great. We're glad it's being pursued, and we're happy to help support to see how we can make the Digital Main Street project go on successfully. Wayfinding, thank you. We're grateful it's being thought about. We ask to be considered at the table as we plan out wayfinding. Where should the signs go? What should they look like? What should they say? How many of them? We want to be at the table for that, because what a sign looks like is important. And I'll give that as an example. Downtown, we have several P signs saying there's parking everywhere. They're squares. Nobody can see them. Everyone's looking for a round sign to tell you where parking is going. So we would just like to be involved in the process for wayfinding to make sure that it is successful. That is not to say we don't think the town is going to do a good job. We just think let's have more people at the table to make sure some things are thought about. We're really pleased to see the initiation for the liaison. We've appreciated working with Mary to date, and we look forward to supporting her however we can throughout the process to help make her job as easy and feasible as possible. We have heard from other communities that that liaison role is extremely important. We're glad it's been put in, so we thank you for putting that in and taking that initiative, and we're here to help support Mary in that department however we can. And the restaurant program, we applaud you for thinking about it and putting in the Skip the Dishes as a recommendation. We just have questions similar to what have been asked. How is it going to work? What is that money going to be used towards? How is it going to be rolled out? And what would the future look like for that program? So just some further clarification on what that program would mean. Overall, that summarizes, again, we wish to thank the town for involving us to date and for thinking about this, but we are really hoping that we can get that additional support that we're asking for to make sure that we have a vibrant downtown when this is done. We love our downtown. We want to keep it. We don't want to see only 20% open. Right now, we're sitting in about 13, 14% vacancy. We don't want that to go to 50, 60, 70. It would really be remiss to try to rebuild this in 2021 versus putting, let's say, 3-4 million into this and keep it going for the 10 years, 20 years, 30 years before we have to do this project again. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your information. Councillor O'Meara has a question for you.
Thank you very much, Arlene, for the presentation. I believe I asked this at some point in the past couple of years as we've been discussing this, but can you tell me what the property owners are doing to assist the businesses in the downtown core as we go through this process?
It's an individual choice of the property owners, and we've heard several different viewpoints. One viewpoint that we hear is they are themselves business people trying to keep this going. They are paying taxes and they are contributing in their way, so for them to be asked to do anything more is not well received by the property owners. We have other property owners who are giving some discounts to their tenants. Those are few and far between.
So, and I'm just trying to take this position because on the other side of this, when we come out, we're going to have a revitalized, brand new, beautiful, vibrant downtown Oakville, which is going to, I would imagine under free market rules, significantly drive the desire for businesses to set up down there, and thereby increasing, I would say, the value of the property already that's down there. So I guess I'm wondering, we as a council are sitting here going to put $1 million into it, maybe more, maybe not. I'm just wondering where the buy-in from these property owners who are probably set to be better off in 2 years than they are right now is. And I guess you're saying it's far and few between, or has there been any large-scale conversation with the owners rather than the business, the people who own the businesses down there?
No large-scale conversation with the owners, no. I think the question remains of, is it a we build it and they will come? I don't know that those answers are guaranteed. So I don't know that they're looking at it as going to be guaranteed that their property will be increased in 2 years.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Knoll.
I want to pick at that one just a little bit more because that was an interesting point. The landlords themselves, the property owners, I assume majority of the merchants downtown are in leased premises, so I would imagine the vast majority have landlords. Have they been involved in, and you said there's been no large-scale discussions, but have there been any discussions directly with the landlords by the BIA, and maybe I should have asked this to staff as well, but has there been any kind of organized conversation with them, or has this been left to the devices of the individual tenants?
No organized with the BIA at this point, so if there has been with the town staff, I can't answer.
And so I mean, perhaps I'll redirect to staff, but are you aware of any direct communication or, I guess, active involvement in any of the planning that with the landlords, or has this been strictly with the merchants?
Sorry, was that directed? I thought you were redirecting
Well, no,
to the staff.
I'm going to redirect to staff after,
Okay.
so I'm curious if you have any information on that.
I don't, only to say that all of our communications out go to the vast majority of the landlords as well. So our email communication list goes to businesses and landlords. So they've been receiving all the information as long as they're on our email list and as long as they're paying attention.
So you as part of your business operation do communicate the same information to the owners as you do to the renters?
Correct.
And have you had any feedback from them? You have had no feedback from them directly?
Not en masse. We've had some come forward to express their viewpoints as individuals, but we don't have an en masse decision from landlords as a whole.
Interesting. Okay. At the appropriate time, I'd like to ask staff that as well.
That would be fine. Councillor Hutchins?
Thank you. Hi, Charlene. My question was before was to do with your tokens and things that you hand out. Have you explored anything reached out to Honk to see if there's something that the stores could tie into with Honk so that, for instance, someone comes in with an app, they get the first hour free, but if they're selling a lot or they're buying a lot from the store can offer through Honk with a special, I don't know, program or whatever that particular store has as its individual to give them an extra hour free or something like that.
Through your worship, I haven't spoken to Honk to see if this is something that they would introduce. My understanding is that for people to get the free hour, there's a code they're given, so I would imagine there might be a similar sort of code that could be set up where the business would therefore be charged back. You know, your code was used X time. So my imagination it would tell me, based on how they're doing the other free hour, is that it could work, but I haven't been in discussions with Honk, no.
Well, I know very little how Honk works, but perhaps that's something that could be explored. I don't know whether, I mean, the town set it up, so presumably that's something that the town could see if that was a possibility too, because it would be another extra offer that stores could hand out to customers that keep coming back on a regular basis or whatever.
Through your worship, just to address the token program that you mentioned, that still does exist. Businesses can choose to use it if they wish. It's a flow-through, so we purchase the tokens from the town at a 10% discount. So if it's $1, we purchase it for 90 cents. We sell it to the businesses for 90 cents. Some do still participate in that program where they would purchase several tokens and give that to loyal customers. Some use it as a way to say thank you and or sorry if they've made an error. A lot of the time, the bulk of people who use it are people like financial institutions, lawyers, financial aids, that type of thing, who say, you know what, yeah, you have to pay to come down here. I'm not set up somewhere where there's a big parking lot, but parking's on us when you come. You know, here's tokens for your next visit. So that's the majority of people who use the tokens at this point, are people who have clients such as that coming in on a regular basis.
I understand, but this is something that I don't know whether it would be helpful or not. It's just something I was thinking of out of the box, where we're trying to encourage Honk as a way of having this free parking. We want people to take up this app and things, and if the town, if the retail stores on the other side were also pushing it and everything else, that would help everybody, I believe.
Councillor, thanks for your thoughts outside the box. Ms. Plummet, would you, for council's benefit, and I'd ask you to speak up when you do it, describe the tokens program that you run, how much money is involved in it, what is the utilization? We need to know the dimensions of the tokens program.
Right. Certainly through you, Mr. Mayor Burton. So the token program that we have right now is they're coins. They're valued at $1. So I can't say they give you an hour of parking, because parking costs different things in different zones of downtown. But they give you an hour's worth of parking. We purchase them from the town for 90 cents. We sell them for 90 cents. So we're a flow through. So sometimes on our budget line, people will see revenue from parking come in, and it's not. We have an equal expense going out. We typically sell, in a normal year, we've been selling about $11,000 to $12,000 worth of tokens. This year, we're not selling nearly that much. We've only sold to date about $3,500, so $3,500 worth of tokens this year. So for whatever reason, the demand has dropped off. But typically, we sell about $11,000 worth of tokens in a year. That then are distributed out in the community for people to use. They're a coin that is only usable in the parking meters in the downtown, so that it's not just $1 given to them. It's a token that they have to then put in the machine, and it acts as $1 in the machines. I believe they might work in Kerr Street as well, but I'm not positive. And they're a handy program, but we, like I say, 11,000, and this year being a slow year at 3,000, we have 471 businesses down there, so they're not being used by the vast majority at this point.
Thank you. That's very helpful for council. I don't see any more questions for you. I thank you very much for your time and your information. Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation?
Next delegation.
I'm sorry, nearly forgot. Councillor Knoll, would you like to direct your question to staff?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. To, I guess, Ms. St. George. The gist of my question really is to understand the level of involvement of the owners, the property owners downtown, as opposed to just the actual renters or the merchants. Have they been involved in the process, and what kind of communication have you had with them?
Through you, Mayor Burton, it's actually Ms. Valley who's been meeting with various stakeholders, including residents associations, various retailers, as well as some of the property owners. That includes Straight Holdings and Bentall, the largest property owner downtown. Now, the comments from the owners generally said that they were supportive of the plan. They thought it was a great streetscape that would result through the construction process. Bentall indicated that they were interested and are actively pursuing short-term leases to get them through the construction period and try and fill those stores, and then looking at longer terms once the project is complete.
Have we directly asked Bentall as an example, and I'm using them as a proxy for all of them, have we directly asked Bentall or any of the other companies if they would participate in some of these mitigation measures in terms of potentially funding or other forms of resource provision to help both their clients as well as the overall downtown? I totally agree with Councillor O'Meara. They're going to get a massive uptick on the property values, and it only seems fair that they should be part of the equation.
Through you, Mayor Burton, it's not a question that we put through to the property owners. The discussion at both BIA meetings, BIA board meetings, as well as through our staff committee, was that there are other things that other people can be doing to help the mitigation process. So the town is developing this strategy, and we're seeking costs to fund that strategy. We talked with the BIA about potentially reducing its levy, although that would have an impact on its ability to market at a time that is critical for marketing. We also spoke about the ability of the business owners to seek a reduction in the rents or look at an escalating rent as you get through the construction. But that's something between the owners and businesses, and it's not something in which we would intervene.
So I completely understand the amazing work that you and your team have done and BIA have done to try to get to this point, and I applaud you for that. So I'm not being critical when I ask this. And I understand that the nature of the contract is between landlord and tenant. I've had a few of those myself. And, but I think that there is, as Councillor O'Meara pointed out, and as I'm reiterating, there's a huge uptick for these landlords. I'm wondering if it might be worth making an approach to them and say, hey, Mr. Landlord, you're about to see this huge increase in the value of your property. Your tenants are going to be stronger. You're going to be able to charge more rent. Maybe you should write a check. I mean, organizations do it all the time for other purposes. Perhaps that could be a way that we could help. I mean, we have the BIA here saying they want more, and I understand them wanting more. We're putting pressure on tax dollars to help fund this already. I don't understand why the owners, the people who have the ultimate highest benefit, aren't participating. Can we do that? Is that something we can do?
I was wondering when it would turn into a question.
Sorry, I forgot the question. What do you think of that? No, is that something that we can do? Is that something that is that something you can do? Maybe the mayor could do it?
Let me offer to intercept the question, because it's really probably more of a political question than a staff question.
That's why I said maybe the mayor could do it.
So thank you, Ms. St. George, for your valiant effort on this line of questioning. I've had meetings with many of our landlords, and I can tell you that from their point of view, so this is, I hope everyone enjoys the sight of the mayor sticking up for the landlords, but that's what I have to do here now. They look at this as an uncertainty and a difficulty for them as well, not just for their tenants or their clients. And so they're not sure that, that we should single them out would be, I think, the first thing I should say. And the second thing I should say is, while there is an interesting idea floating here in the air about uplift in value for the owners of the property when we get to the other end of this. It's, if there is uplift for the property owners, there will also be uplift for us. And so an uplift argument advanced to the landlords by us without, you know, recognizing our own opportunity in the uplift, or maybe I'll put it the other way around. We'd get farther with that argument if we're demonstrating consciousness of our own uplift and ability to help everyone through this. Yes, we certainly can speak to them, but I think for those reasons, we shouldn't expect that this is a unicorn or a magic button. The main event, the main mitigations are before you in the staff report. This discussion, I don't think will change the order of magnitude of what we're looking at. I mean, you might shave a corner here or there, but you know, I think this is the bullet we have to bite. And I also think that it's important to understand that this is surely an initial set of measures. I know that you and staff are committed to monitoring and adjusting whatever we do to make sure that we do the best job we can. And I also recognize that it's important to respect the taxpayer and to make sure that the costs that we're contemplating here are duly vetted by the Budget Committee. And there's time. The Budget Committee will be taking public delegations and submissions by BIA members and BIA boards and whoever for more, different, or extra in January. And that will be in plenty of time to continue to monitor and adjust. I think everyone needs to stay engaged, and we know we're going to have a more wonderful downtown with huge attractiveness on the other side of this, and we know that from the staff report, we know that we have the means to do a much better job of mitigation than the other municipalities that we've surveyed. And we've heard a strong pitch from the BIA, and I think we're going to hear it again from the other delegations, that they're especially anxious about how this will roll out, and the BIA has always believed that free parking would be a big, would have a big beneficial impact. We've also heard through the years that we've been doing this, because let's not forget, we gave 5-6 years of notice for this project this time. We've had information that that points to the fact that free parking is not necessarily the panacea that some might think it is. Certainly when you are concerned about getting people down there, cries of relaxing enforcement so that people can overpark longer aren't helping you make spaces for more people to come down. So we do have some contradictory lines of thought before us, and we've had those now ever since about 2008 when we first started discussing the need for this project to rebuild the roadbed underneath Lakeshore. So I think staff and I will take the suggestion to keep engaging with the landlords to heart, but we will, I think, equally all need to stay engaged with everyone. And I would suggest that we turn now to hear the other delegations.
Can I just clarify, so you're accepting that we would talk to the landlords at some point about potentially asking them to participate? And to be clear, I'm in no way suggesting that we don't approve this in, I'm not trying to, and I thought I said that, and I apologize if I'm implying that somehow I'm trying to refund this proposal. I'd move this if Councillor Giddings hadn't already done it. I think you did a great job. I just want to try to see if we can leverage more funds, because there will be, as you said, adjustments and more needs as we go along.
So I'm very aware that landlords in the downtown have been investing in their properties and trying to bring them up in order to increase their attractiveness. I'm very aware of landlords who have reduced rent in order to keep people. I can't accept the idea that they're not participating in their way with the tools they have. I'm actually very proud of the way the community has all pitched in, so to speak, because we're getting contributions from every direction, including from not just the BIA, but the landlords as well. So, and they vary, the landlords do, by the degree to which they are kicking in, but, you know, each in his own way, each to their own ability. So shall we call the further delegations now? Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation?
Next delegation is Bruce Miller from the Works Gourmet Burger Bistro.
Welcome, Mr. Miller. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you, Your Worship, councillors. So I'm here representing as the leader of the Works Gourmet Burger Bistro. So not only as a reminder do I have the one location downtown, but I also lead 27 others. So the head office for the Works, as I like to say, the global head office is in downtown Oakville, which I'm very proud as a resident to also be here. Now also expanded that and taken on another brand called Big Smoke Burger, which is also in downtown Oakville, the head office, and hopefully I will get a good location, but it will not be in downtown Oakville over the next couple of years. So first of all, I wanted to say thank you. There's been a ton of work done by Dorothy and Mary and the team to be able to put together some mitigation strategies, and as a business owner, I very much appreciate that. I have a unique perspective in the fact that a lot of the benchmarking that they've done, as Dorothy mentioned earlier, of the 8 cities that she's mentioned, I've owned a restaurant in 6 of those 8. So I have gone through this not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 6. So I know what the realities are in this. And the realities are that most municipalities have done very little. So I applaud you for stepping forward to be able to actually do something. If you're looking to other municipalities to get great learnings, you will not get it because they have not done it. So I can tell you what's happened through those times is that the businesses during that time has seen the majority of the businesses, the declines were between 30 and 75% decline, as well as an alarming number of single businesses that closed their doors permanently. So, you know, I think in some cases we talk about there might be a slight decline and maybe there's going to be 10% or maybe 15%. I've said this since we first started having dialogues about it a number of years ago. We have to be open and honest with our group so that they are well prepared to be able to understand as to what they're going to go through, because it's not going to be fun. So to the mayor and to councillor, I have a proposal for just 2 items to be able to try to help against this. The first one is to be able to give monetary support to the businesses in downtown Oakville, and the second one is to be able to mitigate the loss of traffic. So to the first one, which I think obviously is more contentious, which is around, you know, for municipal reasons, we can't go and offer tax incentives. That's fine. Don't offer tax incentives. However, it is within the discretion 100%, as much as I understand, of this council, the levy that is paid in as a BIA fee. Allow all people for the businesses for these 2 periods of 2 years not to pay into the BIA. It's not to say that I take the BIA budget away. It's a creative way to be able to give the ability for those business owners to be able to have a little bit more money in the pocket. So on average, based on the estimates that I can get, it's not going to be a lot, but it'll be about $2,000 to $5,000 per business per year, which will just help to be able to mitigate their losses. So possibly another creative way, as opposed to giving tax incentives, just don't charge the BIA fee. You can fund the fee through the town instead. The second part of it is to be able to, which is funded separately, so park that one, so to speak. The second one is about trying to mitigate the losses in terms of the overall traffic. In this case, I've had some very good success in terms of changing consumer behavior and in using direct mail to be able to do this and using it as a communication vehicle. But no direct mail is worth the stamp you put on it unless you give them an offer, because otherwise it's literature that just goes straight from the super box right into their garbage. So in this case, Through the direct mail campaigns, I would be happy to be able to use. I do over 10 million pieces of direct mail in a year. I get the lowest rate through Canada Post possible. I'd be more than happy to work with the BIA to be able to offer that rate so that it's the most effective rate that you can get. I've done the math on Oakville households, and it would cost $9,300 to be able to do one direct mail campaign out to every single household in Oakville. My proposal would be that you do it 4 times a year, quarterly. For the 2 years in total, it'd be just under $80,000. It's a very effective spend to be able to reach every single household within Oakville 8 times. And you can vary the message as to what you're talking about at the particular time, but there are 3 key messages that I encourage you to be able to do during that time. The first and foremost, we are open for business during construction, quite literally and figuratively. We are open for business. Number 2, just to be able to let them know about the fact that we have got additional parking spaces. So, you know, the perception is Oakville downtown parking is only on Lakeshore. Oh, well, they're ripping up Lakeshore, so obviously there's no parking. We know that's not reality, and we have hundreds of parking spots. Our consumer base, as we saw through the parking study, they're not that well aware of it. So it's just to give them the second message is the fact that not only is there parking in downtown Oakville, we have added more parking for you during construction. So not to worry, you will find a parking spot. And the third one is the offer, which is, yes, free parking. So free parking, you don't need to go look very far in terms of other communities that have helped. I did a simple Google search today. You know, downtown Brampton, of which I have a restaurant there, they've offered free parking in advance of their and during their construction. The Toronto LRT along Eglinton offered free parking during their construction. Guelph this summer, I also have a restaurant there. They also did free parking during the summertime. Elgin in Ottawa, where I also have a restaurant, they also offered it there. So it's nothing new, but I'm about balancing budgets, and so I understand your predicament. So in Oakville, what I'd recommend is not only to do the first hour of honk, which Dorothy had mentioned, which from my perspective only is the fact that I think that it is a growing technology, but I'd like to see the numbers as to how many people use it. My perception, not fact, is the fact that it's more likely to be used by those that are business owners or employees downtown already. So I don't know that that's targeting the right people. I use honk, but I'm there every day. And I do make my contributions for late fines every once in a while to the town of Oakville when I forget to go plug my meter. So the total, I would say, is not only the first hour of honk, but also Saturday free parking. So I understand from the report that's a total of $587,000. So how do we pay for it? My proposal to the mayor and town council is to be able to remove out of the downtown revitalization project the town square. The town square redevelopment is earmarked for $1.5 million. We need to do the streetscape in terms of ripping up the actual lakeshore because of piping and plumbing, and it's beyond its age. We do not need to tear up the town square. We have a beautiful town square, actually. When you compare it to all the other 27 locations that I'm in, I would argue we have the most beautiful town square in Oakville. But this is about priorities, and it's about prioritization and choosing when to do things and when we need to do it and when it's nice to do it. Well, $1.5 million goes a long way towards $750,000 per year of the 2 years of this construction project, which would fund the alternatives that I'm talking about in terms of free parking. So I would rather have the existing town square and fuller stores than a beautiful town square with empty businesses that are bankrupt. So I've got I'm used to the council chambers. Does this work to be able to show? So all I've done here is I've taken the same document and the same appendix from the document that Dorothy put together, but then I've added in the lines of direct mail, which is $40,000 per year. And I've managed the offset on the top of the budget, which is $750,000 a year, by taking away the dollars, not spending it to the town square. And there's one extra line that I've added in here, which is just an offset. So the $587,000 is covered based off the not spending money on the town square. However, I also encourage to be able to go out to local businesses to be able to get them to fund this notion of free parking. Why not go to a transportation company like Ford that happens to be proudly located in Oakville, of which I do have some friends on senior management in Oakville, or at Ford, which I would be happy to talk to about this, is to be able to see if they'd be willing to be able to sponsor this. So a direct mail piece that goes out to every single household in Oakville that says free parking brought to you by Ford. Free parking brought to you by Bud's Automotive. Free parking by Tesla, who seems to be taking over Oakville. So much like you would go to the airport where your carts are paid for by CIBC, then in this case, allow a sponsor to be able to take ownership of it, not for the whole amount, but for whatever amount that we can get. And any additional dollar that comes in there, I've got as an offset, put that back into more free parking so that it's not just Saturday and the first hour of honk, maybe it's all week long. But at least I needed to be able to solve to the budget to the 587. I think I'm through my 10 minutes, but if you do have questions, I've got some insight on skip the dishes and tokens and landlords. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Councillor Hutchins has questions.
Thank you, Bruce, for coming and making a very cogent argument for doing some innovative things. I do have one question, though, about taking the money from the BIA. If stores and retail things are only going to get $2,000 to $5,000 back, is that really going to make a difference? Because I'm sure it's going to cripple the BIA. They're not going to be able to run their programs, the beautification, and all the others. So, I mean, you're robbing from one pocket to give to the other, and the marketing may suffer significantly because of that.
Right, so through the mayor, to be clear, I'm not saying to be able to take one dime out of the BIA budget. This would be an opportunity you were looking for creative ways to be able to fund a tax incentive without actually giving a tax incentive. So to be clear, the entire budget, which I believe is about $1.2 million on the BIA, would then be funded by the town of Oakville. I am not a proponent to be able to reduce, especially in the next 2 years, $1 of the BIA budget.
Well, good. I obviously misheard that. Thank you. I was a little surprised.
And that, just to clarify, that isn't on this chart, right?
This is not. This is just the one to be able to fund the free parking.
Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I very much appreciate your experience as well as your burgers. You've gone through construction in a number of the communities where you have restaurants. You've heard us talk about the fear of employee parking, taking all the spaces. What's your experience, or what would you reply to that?
If I can, through your worship, I'd actually like to give an example where, as we started this project a number of years ago, is that I made an offer out which the mayor himself took up to be able to go to Uptown Waterloo to be able to see what they were doing, and in fact that they had free parking. And if I can quote your worship, is the fact that as we pulled up right in front of the works, which is right on the main street, on King Street in Waterloo, that he was very surprised by the fact that we were able to find parking right in front of the restaurant during work hours. And the reality is the fact that any employee doesn't park in that front street, because any employee that does that is not going to be an employee for very long. So I'm not worried about that at all. I've talked to the other business owners about it. Let us manage that problem. We'll fix it pretty quickly. But my experience in my other restaurants in the other cities is the fact that it is not a problem.
I appreciate that. And for clarity, the construction costs for Town Square, you've taken off $750K for 19 and 20. Is your expectation that we would come back at some point and put that money back in to fix Town Square, or?
If the town council sees that as a priority after the beautification that's already happened in 5 years hence, then great. But I would make that decision once we have better facts and understanding, which is after everything is finished. Then let's make a decision in terms of, my experience, Councillor Giddings, is the fact that it takes a much longer time to recover after these construction periods than people usually allow for. Is that unfortunately in 4 of my case examples, I am 2 years and 3 years after these construction periods have finished, and I am still not back up to the sales that I was prior to going in.
All right, and last question, do you have any information for us concerning landlords?
Yes, I do, is that Bentall Kennedy was brought up. Bentall Kennedy is my landlord, and as you know, they own 18 of the properties in downtown. The experience is the fact that they are not going to give a nickel of reduction. I have had many a conversation with Bentall Kennedy on behalf of just my building, but also I've stood in front of this council on behalf of Bentall Kennedy in the past, and they are not willing to be able to make one concession. My experience in other markets is the fact that it's actually gone to a point of lawsuits when we've gone through this period. And in fact, in the city of Waterloo, which I know we mentioned as one of the benchmarking ones, the landlords have actually joined with the tenants and are in the midst of putting together a lawsuit against the city because of the work that was done and the impact to their businesses. So in that case, the landlords did get involved, but they got involved with the tenants and they're suing the city.
Thank you very much. I always appreciate your input.
Thank you, Mr. Miller, for your information.
Can I give a point of information around Skip the Dishes? Because I know that discussion came up.
I'd be happy to hear it offline.
Excellent. So Skip the Dishes, as Councillor Knoll had mentioned.
Mr. Miller, what I meant was I'd be happy to hear that. We can have a meeting and you can share the information with me.
Thank you.
Council didn't ask you for it. I take that to mean they didn't want to know.
Okay.
Councillor Duddick?
I'd like to know.
Take the cue. Mr. Miller, now someone wants to know.
I would be happy on behalf of the BIA to be able to go and talk with Skip the Dishes. I know the founder. I was in Winnipeg at their head office a week and a half ago. We shouldn't be paying a nickel to them, and in fact, I just signed a deal with them representing 3,000 restaurants. I know I have the best deal in Canada. I can get the BIA members, not that deal because that's 3,000 restaurants, but I can get us the best deal that you can get.
We'll keep your number in the Rolodex. It's an expression. We know there are no more Rolodexes. Madam Clerk, thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation?
Next delegation is Tony Castagner from Fiora, Oakville.
Tony from Fiore.
Is he here?
Thank you very much. Well, Council, I think we can confine it to table now. And I would ask you if you want to, in the spirit that this is an initial set of measures, do you want to go ahead with this as it is? And we'll revise as we go. Or do you want to refer it back to staff to take into consideration the advice that we heard from the delegations? And before you answer that question, let me just double check. Are there other members of the public with information for Council on this matter? Thank you. So, Council, a motion to adopt the proposal, a motion to refer it back. Councillor Giddings, you indicated you had a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a motion. It's an incredibly exciting project that has been talked about before many of us were even on council. We know that there are going to be a number of challenges, as we heard from Mr. Miller and the BIA. I think we've got to provide as much support as we can. I have no difficulty referring it back to staff to build on further items. It's going to be the next council that is part of the budget committee. But I would like to see that this Saturday parking be included as point number 4, because I think that's incredibly important for those that provide this flavor and the spirit of the downtown strip. So I'm happy if it goes back on the understanding that no-cost parking will be offered from April 2019 to April 20, be implemented as detailed under section 3.1.
All right, so so referring it back as an alternative instead of adopting it, I'm hearing you wanting to adopt it, understanding that we're going to monitor and adjust as we go anyway, so referring back is not necessarily an attractive option, and I support that. Would you be good enough to write out your point number 4, because I'm not sure we all heard what you said, or say it slower and louder.
That no-cost Saturday parking be offered from April 2019 to November 2020 as detailed under 3.1 parking subsidy.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Elgar.
Maybe I just have to be clear what Councillor Giddings' motion is, but this would have to go to Budget Committee of 2019 for the 2019 budget, correct? We can't rejig our budget tonight here. But if I heard what you're saying no parking revenue coming into the town, and you want that passed tonight for effective April 19th until the end of November?
If I may, Mr. Mayor,
I don't know how we do that.
correct. We're offering first hour free parking with honk this evening.
So let's, wait, maybe I can help here. As I understand the entire motion, and we have to read the entire motion, the councillor is adding the free Saturday parking to the package, yes. But all funding required in 2019 and 20 is being referred to the 2019 capital budget process.
Okay, I'm fine with that, but I just want, because I thought the way the councillor was talking that we were approving it tonight. We're approving it'll go to the 2019 Budget Committee.
Councillor, you're comfortable with that, right? That is everybody's understanding. Councillor Chisholm.
It's for clarification on the recommendations. I understand that the funding required for 2019 and 2020 and identified in Appendix A be referred to the 2019 capital budget process. So it's very clear to me. It's been deferred that time.
Thank you, Councillor Dunick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Is there any opportunity whereby we could ask staff to report back at a later date regarding the possibility of offsetting some of the BIA budget in terms of what I had referred to with possibly the horticulture? We have that percentage split. Is that something we could maybe look at through the budget process as well?
Everything can be looked at and should be looked at through the budget process. And in January is when the Budget Committee will be having its meetings on submissions and requests. And so that would be the perfect time for those of you who are already guaranteed to be here then to bring that forward. Some of us still have to pass a test. Anyone else? Councillor Adams.
So am I correct? We're getting this written up and put on a screen so we can read it? Because I'm not sure I perfectly heard it in our echoey chamber that we're in.
In addition to the proposal for the first hour free that's already in the program, the councillor wants to add free Saturday parking, which you were told will cost $316,000, and all expenditure items are being referred to the Budget Committee.
And can I ask our staff to help clarify the number of 315 and the number of 272? Are they, is there an overlap? How about that?
Councillor, since it's being referred to to the Budget Committee, that test can be applied then.
Okay. I'm assuming the answer is there is some overlap. We might not know what the number is right now.
No, I
but-
didn't hear the last part of your
Oh,
question,
so-
Mr. Mayor, but in terms of overlap, if that was the question, those are two standalone costs. That's the
Right.
cost of Saturday parking, and that's the cost of the
So
honk.
if you add A plus B, you're going to get you'll get a different number.
That's right.
Yeah. So staff will have to go back and recalculate what the combined effect would be, is my point. Thank you.
I don't think that overlap's going to amount to much. If you do you can do that math in your head. But it's all good for the Budget Committee.
Maybe one day when we're in the new council chamber, I'll hear you.
I take your point. You can't, I'm starting to learn, you have to look at the microphone even though you want to look at the person. May I, Councillor Hutchins?
Yeah, I just want to make it very clear to everyone that it's important, I think, for council to look at this very seriously. I know it's going to the budget, and I know Councillor Adams is already sitting on the budget since he's not running in the current municipal election. But it makes things a lot easier for the BIA and everybody to advertise, to say it's Sunday and it's Saturday and Sunday free parking. And again, I come to this business about a lot of seniors.
There's an old rule, which is when you've sold, stop selling.
Okay, good. That's all I just want to make sure.
Shall I put the vote?
I'd like a recorded vote, please.
All those in favor, please rise to be named. Councillor O'Meara, Councillor Robinson, Councillor Dudek, Councillor Chisholm, Councillor Giddings, Councillor Hutchins, Councillor Elgar, Councillor Longo, Councillor Knoll, Councillor Grant, Councillor Adams, and Councillor Lischina, and Mayor Burton. Thank you, everybody. It carries unanimously. And I do hope that the BIA and the public will take to heart my remark earlier that this is an initial set of measures and that Council takes seriously its duty to monitor and adjust as we go about these very important things. And Council, if you will now turn your attention to item 8, we have the rehabilitation of the Caleb Smith House at 2460 Old Bronny Road. And there's a presentation available if you require it, and I have no registered delegations. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We went through this in detail at committee, and if there's no one from the public or my council colleagues have any questions, I'd be happy to move it at this time.
Councillor Elgar.
Thank you. I don't need the presentation. I just wonder maybe if you're on that committee. I read the proposal was presented to Heritage Oakville on July the 24th, and it was generally supported. Words like that make the flag go up. I just wonder if maybe get a little explanation of what that meant.
Councillor Dudek.
The reason for generally supported was there was concerns expressed regarding the amount of distance around the heritage property, that it was not going to be shoehorned. And so the concerns that were expressed there, we were generally supportive. However, we had concerns related to that, and staff were able to capture that, hence why Councillor Giddings mentioned it.
So you, through you, Mayor Burton, with that then, everybody on the committee is fine
Correct.
with this? I thank you.
All righty then. Are there members of the public with information for council on this matter? May I put the vote? All those in favor? And that is carried. Item 9 is accompanied by a memo from the legal department distributed this evening to the members to inform you that the conditions have been met. Is there a mover for this item?
Just a quick question, if I may. Although we did get the memorandum this afternoon, it mentions that the agreement's on file with the clerks. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to stop by the clerks before coming here today. I'm wondering if we can get some details, if possible, on what's contained in the Section 37 agreement.
Good evening. The sound is pretty bad back there. Do you mind repeating the question?
What did we get?
The owner of the site agreed to a cash payment for the bonusing of 200 units. The cash payment will go into a zoning bonusing fund, a community fund that will be used when the time is right, when the time comes. It will be used for the uptown core bonusing benefits that were listed in the official plan.
Burton, if I could just add, there was also some road improvements that were secured through the Section 37 agreement. So in terms of both Taunton Road, securing the other half of the road and funds to construct that, as well as Oak Walk, extending it out to Trafalgar, the land and 50% of the cost. So there were road improvements that were also achieved through the Section 37 agreement in addition to the dollars. Could you hear me?
More or less. What would the total value of that be, or can we discuss that in public?
800,000.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, got it. And yeah, well, I'm a little disappointed we didn't get any affordable housing units, but very good, thank you. Unless my colleague has any questions, we're prepared to move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Grant, for moving the item. May I put the vote? All those in favor? And that is carried. Council, I turn your attention, I hope, to the item 10, Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee report. And there are recommendations pertaining to items 6A and 6B and the minutes to be received. Is there a motion? Councillor Duddock, thank you. May I may I call the question? All in favor? That is carried. Council, I'm delighted to be able to tell you that we're almost done. If I could have a motion to rise and report. Councillor Hutchins, all in favor? And that carries. I rise and report that the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on consent items 1, 2, and 3, public hearing items 4 and 5, discussion items 6, 7, 8, and 9, and advisory committee minutes, item 10, as noted by the clerk. If there's a mover and seconder for this report, I'd be grateful. Councillor Elgar and Councillor Knoll, all those in favor? And the report is adopted. One more little thing. If we could have a mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws. Councillor Robinson, thank you. Councillor Grant, thank you. All in favor? The bylaws are carried and adopted. Colleagues, that has completed our work. It's been terrific working with you, and I thank you very much for your time and attention, and we are adjourned.